like to welcome everybody out. As you've noticed, we have a long agenda, so we'll jump right into this and get going. Item number 1, presentation of Carbon County Employee of the Month, Rose Barnes.
Commissioners, our Employee of the Month is Ryan Monson. He's from our GIS department, and I'm going to let Todd talk a little bit about him. And he's been a refreshing hire. He's always friendly. He's just always. I've known Todd for a long time outside of Ryan. Well, I've known you too, Todd. we were teasing earlier because they said they were going to show up at 3:30, and I go, well, you could, but we would do a dress rehearsal. We should have. Okay, I'm gonna let you talk about Todd. Okay. Ryan.
Right. So when we hired Ryan just about 2 years ago, he went through and quickly got all of his building inspector tests done. There's 8 tests that are required. He got those accomplished in just a little over a year. And so all of those duties on top of all the inspections and squeezing in time to study and getting that taken care of. Also with the transition with Dave and Kathy leaving about the same time, going through and picking up all the inspections and completing them. So he's constantly going through and make sure all the final inspections are done, making sure all the paperwork and reports are taken care of. His construction experience is extremely helpful. So when we have members of the community come in with a project, Ryan's able to sit down with them and say, here's some other ways to do it. Here's some ways you can save some money. And help them along in the process. So his background as a contractor is invaluable to us as a department and as a community. So we just want to thank him for all of his hard work he's put into getting all of his certifications done and the quickness in which he's done it. So,
thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yes, Ryan, thank you.
We thought you were going to speak to us, Ryan. Thanks for all you do.
I asked him to wear pants, but he said he doesn't want to.
Only when it gets super cold.
Even if it snows today, shorts still.
Item number 2, consideration of possible approval of a donation to Miss Carbon County Outstanding Teen.
I don't know if, there's Winter.
There we go.
Hi, I'm Winter Pendray, and I represent our great community as Miss Carbon County's Outstanding Teen 2018. The Miss Carbon County organization has served our community for over 60 years. We are a branch of the Miss America and Miss America's Outstanding Teen organization and do not wear this crown because it is beautiful, but because it stands for something. You'll notice there are 4 points, and they symbolize service, style, scholarship, and success. Our organization offers personal and professional opportunities for local young women to share their talent, be involved in their community, and promote a service platform of their choosing. We are continuing to grow and improve. My platform is Get Uncomfortable. I chose this because for as long as I can remember, I've had social anxiety. And for me, it's important that everybody knows that they are able to get out of their comfort zone and face their fears. So it's not just for people with social anxiety, but anybody who is going through a hard time in their life or has a fear that they can't overcome. My plans for implementing this are I'm in the middle of writing a book, a children's book right now, and I'm hoping to get that published. I have been to many of the elementary schools here in the community, and I'm planning on attending more. And I also want to involve local members of the community and interview them and get that out into the, make a movie or a TV show, like shorter version of a movie about that. The county commissioners and community have been so supportive of the Miss Carbon County's Outstanding Teen Program. I'd like to again ask for financial assistance for this amazing organization. I'll be representing this county at the Miss Utah's Outstanding Teen Pageant in March of next year. I have begun preparations and have worked very hard to be prepared for this amazing opportunity. The state competition entrance fee is $400 per contestant. You can see the breakdown of costs on our shared invoice. We would like to ask for any support that can be given to help us accomplish our goals and represent our community well at the state level. Thank you for your time and service you give to our community. Please contact us with any events or projects we can assist with.
Great
Thank-
job.
Thank you, Winter.
You're doing quite well for having anxiety about presenting to the public and stuff. You did a great job. Seth, it looks like last year we paid $400. Do you know what we budgeted for this year? Same thing?
Right.
Perfect.
I'd make a motion to go ahead and approve that invoice, and we'll get that taken care of.
I'll
Thank you.
second your motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations.
Thank you, Winter.
Thank
Do
you.
well.
Commissioners, on that same line, since we have enough people here, the Carbon County Royalty are doing the other fundraiser that they're doing for the Carbon County Royalty. They're doing a Zumba dance activity, whatever it is, girls' night out party on Saturday at Pinnacle. Tickets are $10 for right for kids. They're going to have some raffle things. So if members of the community would also like to support them, you can contact one of the royalties and get some tickets and help them out too. Because even though the county's participating with that, it costs much, much more than the entrance to be able to, for these girls to do that. So that's my plug.
So
Thanks,
Zumba Saturday.
And guys, if you
Have
don't
fun.
dance, you can also buy a raffle ticket, and it still works. So.
Great. Thank you. Item number 3, approval of minutes. Commissioners, we have 2 sets of minutes, or no, 3, excuse me. 3 sets of minutes. We'll take them one by one. April 4th, 2018.
Commissioners, I didn't have any adjustments to that. I'll make a motion to go ahead and approve the April 4th minutes.
I'll second that motion. I as well didn't find any corrections. Thank you, Lori.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next set of minutes is the April 18th.
What about April okay, yeah.
Let's go April 18th. This is the 4 o'clock meeting,
The open and public meeting,
the open public meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
Okay, we have a motion.
And a second?
All in favor?
Aye.
So now this comes down to the April 18th, 4:30 regular commission meeting. Do we have any corrections?
I didn't have any corrections. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve that one.
We have a motion.
And I'll second your motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item number 4, update from Future in Design regarding grant it received from United States Economic Development Administration. Nicolina.
And Brian Sather, right?
Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioners, for
Thank you.
having us here today.
Thank you for being here. We're just wanting to get a little bit of an update on where the project is at. The county has pledged some funding, some in-kind match money to help get the project underway. We haven't received a whole lot of information since then, so we appreciate you being here and helping to provide some information.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate it. This is actually our first public statement on the project, since there's been some significant changes, and we've kind of been in contact. And so I appreciate you guys being patient and letting us work through those, so then we could come back and be prepared with something concrete and not pie in the sky for you and the community.
Okay.
So, Brian, do you want to just start? And we're just going to give the community and you just a little bit of really very quick context of who we are and how we're working together.
Yeah, so, thank you for having us, and we do apologize that it has taken a while to get back here. I think it was a little over a year ago that we were in this room
No,
talking. How was it longer than that?
it's pretty much been a pregnancy. It's been like 9 months.
Well, anyway, when we first started talking about this project, things were quite different than they are now. However, the meat of what we're trying to do has stayed the same. For anyone who's interested and hasn't seen or heard from us on this, we'll just really quickly tell you who the players are. Blacksmith International is my company. We manufacture consumer goods, mostly for Utah-based and companies. We do most all of that overseas at the moment, so this project is a way for us to start bringing some of that work back here and creating those jobs here in places like Price where they're needed. We have a track record of over 500 manufacturing projects. We've taken many projects from design to the store floors, so we know what we're doing there. The learning curve on the facility is going to be fun, but we'll get through that. Most of the important stuff we have down. And we've been doing this for a while. We have the team in place. And another interesting thing is that the team that is in place is extremely excited about this. I get requests constantly from them. I want to work on the Price project. I want to be involved. So everybody's excited.
Okay. So Future in Design is a workforce development organization. We work with our mission is to reduce cycles of generational poverty. And we really believe that if we can do a well-rounded, bringing everybody's strengths into the table, a collaborative impact through education, workforce, and employment, that we could start helping removing and reducing some of those barriers that prevent people from having and attaining livable wages and having healthy, successful lives. We currently run a cohort already of 24 young adults in the Wasatch Front in West Jordan. We have had great success with it, and they're now getting ready to move into apprenticeships. So we're working with industry to place 24 young adults, all high school seniors. They've all been learning front-end design and front-end coding, and it's been amazing to watch them. And we've received 2 big grants to extend that program, so we'll now be serving 50 juniors and seniors. And so we're excited to take that model and transfer that down here on the tech side, and also expand into the manufacturing, where we provide training for underemployed and unemployed adults as well, to then be picked up into an apprenticeship through Blacksmith International. So as of the project status, as of May 1st, is yes, Blacksmith and Future in Design have separated from the JCPenney Building Coalition, and we have decided to pursue a new direction. Future in Design was awarded an $800,000 grant that comes with an $800,000 match, one-to-one match. As you mentioned earlier, Commissioner hopes that the county has pledged to be part of that match, which we're very thankful for. And the grant was awarded to Future in Design, and it is part of the outcomes that have been promised on the grant, is that Blacksmith will create within 9 years 200 jobs. So from there, an edit to this slide is, we went from securing last night to this morning. We just signed the lease on the former Bell's building. So our lease negotiations are complete, and we're now working with the EDA to go through the government procurement process to start purchasing our technology equipment and our manufacturing equipment. And we're also talking a lot about curriculum design. What is that going to look like? And we are currently correcting bids. We're going to do some light building renovation, pretty much just throw up some walls and some classrooms and get to work. We'd like to see this as an evolution of a building. And let's get in, let's start, as Brian says, let's make it quick and dirty. Let's get in, get people, start them training, and then we can build it out and make it fancy as we go. So just, this is our outcomes and our goals and our objectives. We've broken those down to a short term. I won't read them through them all. Just a couple things that I really want to point out is, yes, the goal is to create a sustainable and profitable advanced manufacturing facility through Blacksmith here in Price. We want to hopefully, on the training side, create an apprenticeship opportunity. That's not just with manufacturing, but also technology. And our outcomes that we have committed to within these first 3 years are to consistently employ 75 employees for advanced manufacturing, and create a school to work to college pipeline for rural young adults, because we are aware that your young adults are your greatest exports. So we'd like to create incentives for them to stay and build their communities further. Anna, do you want to add something?
Before we get off of that, I want to address the change and our new direction. So when we looked at how best to make this happen, you know, when we stood here a year ago or whatever it was, we talked to people and told them what we were planning to do. You know, we said at that time that you know, we're committed to creating these jobs, we're committed to making it happen. When we sat down and talked about, well, how best can we make that happen, it looked to us like we had to make a change. But the changes as they impact Price, us moving away from the JCPenney building into the Beals building, have no material impact to what we're doing. So in most respects, we have a better space for what we're doing. Well, in all respects, honestly. We have a better space for what we're doing, and more room to really make this thing work. So if anything, we're in a much better position than we were when we talked about it.
Yeah. And then our long-term goals and outcomes, I think one of the biggest that we, Brian and I agree on wholeheartedly, is that we will continue to move forward and we will work hard to make this happen, but we know that if we have the community not only behind us, but actually taking ownership of the project, that it will be, its ability to be successful will significantly increase. So this is kind of our call to action for our longest term goal, which is that this project is built hand in hand and maintained with the community that it serves. And I feel like everything else is highlighted on here, and I've already mentioned it, so I want to turn the time over for any questions.
Commissioners?
Thank you, Nicolina. I do have a couple of questions in regards to the $800,000 match for the EDA grant. Are those funds lined up and committed to your project at this point in time?
That was one of the.
Can you share about, you know?
That was one of the requirements of the EDA grant. Yes, they have been committed.
Are you at liberty to talk about those in any detail as far as partners or what's going on as far as where those monies are coming from?
I don't know if I can based on the partners. I don't know if I've gotten permission from them.
Okay. Would you consider getting that put together and bring that forward so that we know, you know, how to be a better partner with you along the way? Our commitment is very minor compared to the 800,000. So we would like to know, you know, who those other partners are, please. Do you want to turn up the lights, Seth?
So I think in general terms, Blacksmith is one of the major contributors to that. On top of that, we have a committee that is focused on, every week we're meeting and we're talking about how, you know, how do we make this happen? What are the things that need to be in place? We have legal counsel in there that's donating time. We have accounting consultants that are donating time. We have, Nicolene on the tech side has companies that are donating software, things like that. And so if you break it down, there's not somebody who's coming to the table and saying, hey, we're giving you 850,000 of the 800. It is a wide range of people who are doing
In-kind
it.
services, is that what you're using?
Yeah, there's services,
qualify-
there is
qualifying.
money, there's product, there's lots of things. So.
That's great. We'd love to be part of that process. The other question I had is in regards, because we discussed the grant in a public meeting too long ago. So just as a review, if you can, let's talk about what those EDA requirements were to receive that grant and how they are supposed to be used.
Okay, what questions do you have specifically?
Specifically, how is the grant, what are the requirements that you had to do to receive the grant, and what requirements then are you under to, the way the grant was written, what are you supposed to produce ultimately? What was the
We are
commitment
supposed
within
to produce, as I mentioned at the beginning of the this presentation, we are to produce 200 advanced manufacturing jobs that have been committed by Blacksmith International.
it? So
That
it's-
is the ultimate outcome of the grant, and that we have to have a one-to-one match of the EDA monies.
Thank you.
And those 200 jobs, is that for the county? It was tied to the
Yes.
Carbon County? Okay.
Yes, and that is within 9 years. So the grant completes in 3 years, but we're held to the outcomes of that grant for 9 years.
And when does the timeline start on that?
The timeline starts on that, I believe within, I'm sorry, let me think. No, you know, the timeline starts on when we were awarded the grant. So the timeline starts in September, started in September of 2017.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions, commissioners?
Just appreciate you having you here today and appreciate the information. Do what we
Thank you.
can to support you in your efforts, and thank you for trying to replace some of our lost jobs.
Well, we're very thankful, and again, we're very thankful you and the community have been so supportive to rally around us, especially as we went through this major change. But, you know, it's actually working out even better, and so we feel a lot better about it, and we feel that we will be able to reach these outcomes. They feel a lot more tangible now. So we want to thank you. We want to thank the community. We'd like to thank Tammy Ursenbach, who brought us here and helped us secure that grant. So, and we're very thankful to the Bear Committee, who have been amazing, and Jerry Jamber. So you have a lot of amazing people in this community that really love this community and continue to work for it. So we're proud to be part of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 5, review and possible approval of Resolution 2018-5 adopting an amended tax assessment list for Special Tax Assessment Area 2015-1 Hilltop Subdivision.
Commissioners, at your last meeting, you adopted the recommendations of the Board of Equalization for the Hill subdivision. This resolution simply sets forth, it's really an amended assessment list. You've recorded one assessment list before, but we needed to amend it so that it drops off about 3 different parcels that are not going to be assessed, and it just needs to reflect the manner by which the assessment's going to be done, and that is by lot rather than by owner. So this is just a document. This resolution allows us to correct our previously recorded assessment list, and then we will tie the levying ordinance to that document, assuming you pass that.
Thank you. I'd make a motion to go ahead and approve the, excuse me, and adopt the amended assessment list for the Hilltop subdivision.
And I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 6 is review and possible approval of ordinance 494 confirming assessment list and levying a special tax assessment against certain properties in Carbon County, Utah's special tax assessment area, number 2015-1 Hill Subdivision, for road improvements and related matters.
Commissioners, this ordinance, if you should choose to pass this tonight, actually puts the assessment in place. Of course, that exact amount will be modified by actual costs on the ground, but allows the assessment actually to be put in place and to allow a notice to go out to the property owners, I believe from the treasurer or the, let's see, I believe it's from the treasurer, and a notice of assessment interest. It's actually to be signed by the clerk auditor, but it will go out to them if you should choose to pass it. So it puts the assessment in place. This is what actually levies the assessment and allows us then to proceed to allow the design to proceed and the procurement of the contractor to proceed. And it's the next step preliminary to getting a bond in place.
Okay.
So once we've got that, all those other parts can start to fall into place.
Commissioners, any other questions?
I don't have any other questions. I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve.
Just a comment in section 4 that it does specify that the assessment area is estimated to be 700,000. So if we go over that amount through the bid process, we'll have to have further guidance and discussions at that point in time. But I would second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Item number 7, review and possible approval of 2018 Emergency Management Performance Grant. Justin Needles.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So just seeking approval to apply for the EMPG grant again this year. It's a 50-50 match, gives us $44,000. My salary is the match for that. So it just helps us with the cost of my salary. Nothing's changed from previous years. This is awarded from the state of Utah.
Questions? Seems similar to same money as last year.
Yep.
Everything's the same.
$44,400.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Motion and second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item number 8. Why don't you just stay there and hold on?
Okay.
Review and possible approval of a 2018 Homeland Preparedness Grant application.
Yeah, so we're looking to apply for the State Homeland Security Planning Grant application again. This is a regional grant, so ourselves in Emery County. This grant gives us a total of, between the two counties, $225,494. Actually just came from a meeting with Emery County. This year, our request for the money would be $132,809.50. Our portion increased a little bit this year because we have to pay for our alerting, our mass notification system alert sense that we just got last year. So that would be, this is a 0% match, so this is a 100% grant from the state. The state gets the grant from the federal government, and then they're required to give a certain amount to the locals. And 25% of this has to go to law enforcement activities, so this benefits the law enforcement in Carbon County.
Justin, in future years, is there any other projects that we could request additional funding from this very same program for?
So this funding is very specific. This has to be tied to terrorism in one form or another. So a lot of this funding goes to our police activities, to our hazmat team, to prevent those type of terror activities and be prepared for them. So this funding itself is very specific of what it has to be spent for and what we can use those things for. So there might be some opportunities in other grants, but this grant probably not, unfortunately.
Yeah, we'd have to be very specific and make sure that it matches up, but.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thanks, Justin.
Thank you.
Item number 9, review and possible approval of a recommendation from the Planning Commission for an amendment to Country Crossing subdivision located near 700 South, 500 West in Wellington area. Kevin Callahan, or Todd, if you want to speak to this. Kevin?
So this is a amendment to Country Crossing. So it was 2 lots, and they want to amend it to just be 1 lot, is what they're seeking at this time.
Okay, it's just basically a combination of the lot.
Combination of the lots, yes.
Okay. Questions, commissioners?
I don't have any questions.
Looks like everything still falls into the zone and everything's adequate that way.
Yep.
I'd go ahead and make a motion to approve.
Seconded?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item number 10 is public hearing regarding a change to the Carbon County zone map from R1-20K to C1 located near 750 South, 500 West in Wellington area. You should have just stayed there.
So this is in reference to the Country Crossing. So they did the amendment so they can do a potential zone change to change it to a C1 from a residential 120. So the minimum requirements for a commercial zone is 3 acres. And by combining those lots, they meet the minimum requirements of 3 acres for a C1 zone.
So changing it from the residential to a commercial.
To a commercial, yes.
Okay. All right. Commissioners, do you have any more questions? If
Unless
not-
there's any kind of a development.
There is, Commissioners. Yeah,
Yep.
we probably ought to get into that a little bit before we open
So
up.
they're
the
looking to
public
do
hearing.
a potential butcher shop. That's why they want to change it to the commercial C1 zone, and allow to do meat processing on a building on that parcel. So that's what they're looking ultimately to do with it if the zone change is approved. The Planning Commission last night discussed a conditional use permit for the property, but it's all pending
A zone change.
the zone change. If the zone change happens, then it's can move forward. If it doesn't happen, then they wouldn't be allowed to do that.
Probably goes without asking, but all the neighbors have been notified in regards to the zone change, and obviously we'll have a public hearing.
Yes.
Those proper steps as far as notification and all that.
Okay.
The public hearing is tonight on the zone change.
Correct. We're
and
just discussing before we open the public hearing. Any further questions before we open the public hearing?
No, go ahead.
If not, we'll open this public hearing at 5:02. Anybody that would like to speak to this, please come to the mic, state your name for the record, and share with us your concerns. If you have similar concerns, please keep them brief if they're similar to somebody that presented before you. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Betty Jo Campbell. I live at 555 South, 500 West in Wellington, which is north of the said property. I came last night to the planning and zoning meeting, but there was no allotment of time for public comment. And the question I was asking, when they're putting it, they're going to have a slaughter yard. This is the proposed change, that they want to be able to slaughter domestic animals and then process them and process wild game. Where is he going to have this holding pen? Because the animals will come in probably the day before and be held overnight till the following day. That was a question I had. Now, at the bottom, is he putting it to the bottom of the ground? The ground slopes to the river. There is an area what is drainage from a flood control plus irrigation, and it has gotten muddy down there. Dino Katipas owns property across the street from this parcel, and last week he was irrigating. He uses pipe
Okay.
and not the sprinkler system, and it got muddy down below this because we found out, because with the EWP project that they're working on for the Price River, they mistakenly took some equipment down there and got it stuck and had to have more equipment come down to get it out. So if he's putting this pen down below, that's going to be a straight drainage into the Price River. He also indicated last night that the only buildings that were nearby was the steel store, which is up the road and across the street. But there is property owners, one right next door, that's planning on putting in a modular home.
Okay.
And so I was just wondering if we could get some of these items addressed and understand what exactly is happening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Benjamin Poss, and I'm the person that lives across the street from the steel store. And I had no idea about this until today. So I'd like to know how big he's planning on being, how much smell there's going to be from this processing, and how it's going to affect my property values. I'm not really in favor of it because I don't know the answers. So I'm against it.
Okay. Thank you.
My name is George Cook. I have the lot directly to the south of this property. I too have the same concerns of these other people do, my other neighbors. I come in asking questions yesterday and the day before, and they never really gave me any clear answers about how many head of livestock you're going to be able to keep on there at one time and how long you're going to keep them there for. This being a slaughterhouse, what are they going to do to contain the blood and store it as long as the inedibles that come from a slaughterhouse? Being a meat cutter myself for 10 years, I know the smells that come with a meat shop and a slaughterhouse, and what's going to be done to contain all that. Nobody really had a business plan of what they were going to do for this. So until somebody makes, can answer all these questions, I'm against it. And I'm going to lean with my neighbors.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is David Platt. We own the property. We have contiguous property on the entire north side of the site and the east side of the site. A little bit about my background. I have a bachelor's and master's degree from the University of Utah. When I got my master's many years ago, I studied under Morris Johnson, he was my mentor for my thesis, and it was written. First of all, he was the retired Salt Lake City planning director. I have a degree in urban planning and regional development. Morris always said this: the reason that you wanted to have a planning commission is because you don't want to end up with a slaughterhouse in your neighborhood. Gentlemen, if it was to end up in your neighborhood, would you want it? First of all, I think it is zoned right now for residential. There are people living there, and it should be maintained as a residential area. I think that the plan is poorly proposed. It should be sent back to the Planning Commission, and I think that they should reconsider it being located in some other area. Do you have any questions of me?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Mayor Joan Powell, and I probably heard a drift of this maybe a couple weeks ago and whatnot, and I just kind of let it blow in the wind because I didn't really know how far it was going to go into it. But I'm really glad that the citizens of that area are here tonight, because if they hadn't have been, I would have come up here and said, what about those people that live there? So we welcome economics, we do, but I don't think that's the place for it. So I'm thinking of these guys and the smell and all the stuff that goes along with it, and I think you had people say with pretty good information concerning that. So I think you need to take a second look at this.
Anyone else that would like to speak to this? Appreciate those that have come forward. If no one else would like to speak to this, we'll close this public hearing at 5:09. Commissioners, that's the public hearing. Item number 11 is consideration of possible approval of a change to Carbon County zone map from R1-20K to C-1 located near 700 South, 500 West in Wellington, Wellington area. Kevin, and then we've already spoken to this. Commissioners, do you have any questions?
I do in regards to the items that were brought up. I don't know if Todd would like to address any or all of those at this point.
I think your mic's off.
Thanks. No, I wondered if you would like to address any of those questions that were brought up.
So first of all, with the, if I might just point out, in the application, and this might lead you into what you're going to present, in the application it states that there should be zero impact to the area or the neighborhood around this. And so with that, could you help address some of those issues concerned?
So with the processing facility, so yes, the animals will be dropped off at the location. He's going to do the slaughtering of the animals inside the building. So his plan isn't to have a large number stacked up. There'll be several he'll slaughter them. All of the inedibles, leftover material will be hauled away daily. So he'll take it to the county landfill and deposit that on a daily basis. He's working with the state of Utah to get his meat processing license. There's several different types of licensing that he can apply for depending on what he's going to sell, or if it's just going to be more or less for local people to use, drop off their cows. He might have some type of a retail component with it where people can come in and buy meat products from him. And then he'll have, in the fall, he'll do a wild game processing, and there's certain standards and regulations to keep the domestic and the wild separate with coolers and all of that. So he's following the state guidelines on setting up his building according to the Department of Ag, and he's in the process. They're reviewing his plans now and waiting for those to get back for the state to approve, yes, how you have your building structured is applicable to our standards.
Is there sewer in the area, or is it septic? Because as he washes and cleans up, there's going to be a larger amount of water used in a facility like this. Yep. Is there sewer near?
I thought from my talking with Pryway there is sewer near, so he's going to have to work. So the water is going to come from Wellington City. So one of our concerns was, are they going to be able to provide enough water for a commercial establishment? They sent an email back saying that they would be able to provide, water for that. So they'd work with Wellington City on the water requirements and then work with Prywide on the sewer portion of it, because there's, with all the fats and the grease and everything from the processing, you have to have certain systems set up to collect that and dispose of that all properly.
Grease traps
and all of that he's going to have to work with Prywide and get that all taken care of before we would issue any type of a building permit for it.
Can I make a comment, Commissioners?
Mm-hmm.
The legal standard that governs a zone change is whether or not your decision is rationally related to legitimate public objectives. Or in other words, your decision has to be, it has to be reasonably debatable that the denial or the approval of the zone change will protect the general welfare of the public. I would remind you that you're not looking at a land use application at this point. You're making a legislative decision as opposed to an administrative decision. So you are looking at whether or not this is in the best interest of the welfare of the public generally, and not just with respect to the contemplated use. So, but that also doesn't mean, excuse me, that you can't take that contemplated use into account. You can certainly consider that, given that there's been a commitment from the property owner that this is the use that it's going to be. But along with that, you are to consider whether or not the proposed zone change is, for example, compatible with the rest of the neighborhood and with the objectives of the general plan with respect to that area. But I just wanted to remind you that you have broad discretion when making a zone change. When you're deciding on a land use application, your decision has to be supported by substantial evidence. In this case, a court would give you much deference as to whatever decision you made, as long as it's reasonably debatable that your decision is in the general welfare of the public.
With that in consideration, Todd, as far as county planning and different things, it is very common to have large residential areas where where parcels are converted to commercial for development. Do you foresee additional parcels here in this area being developed and used commercially? Is this going to be a singular area within a residential area for a long period of time? Where do you see the future of this?
So when the proposal came to me, we looked at it, and from the aspect of our code doesn't specifically address slaughterhouses, meat processing facilities, butcher shops. We don't specifically address it, so we do have to allow it in a zone somewhere. I thought it could be compatible in a C1. One of the neighboring zones to the east of them is an industrial zone, so if you look at the potential businesses that could be located in an industrial zone, they could, those would also could have as much of effect as, allowing a slaughter yard. I know there are some residential homes around it. I thought with the plan that he had set up, that he could mitigate a lot of the concerns with the smell and all that. It's not going to eliminate all of them, but we felt with some of the conditions we put in the conditional use permit that we could help reduce that as much as possible. So I don't know, as far as other businesses that have come to look to develop there, I haven't been contacted for anything, but there's that potential with the industrial zone. You could have some type of an industrial business located in that zone just to the east of where he's at and adjacent to it.
So with the existing zoning in the area, there's already risk for something that could be considered disturbing for residential?
Yes, potentially.
Okay. I have a few other questions, but commissioners, if you have questions, feel free to interrupt.
With the changing of the zone, is there still an opportunity for the residents in the conditional use permit process to come forward and put in their concerns and maybe have those addressed or mitigated? In that process, I understand that we're not considering that in this process. It's more about the zone change than it is about the use, but will there be other opportunities for the residents that live around there to speak to this, to have opportunity to voice their opinions at a later date?
So
when the business comes in with and applies for a business license.
So with the conditional use permit, It's an administrative process, so there isn't a set public hearing for conditional uses. We allow in our planning commission public comments on any of the agenda items. So if there are concerns on the agenda, anyone can speak to that. They open it up if there's any concerns. But specifically a public hearing for a conditional use permit, we don't have that. So we look at the potential impacts to the area and look at those and see what they are and then how we can mitigate those, and we've reviewed those standards and so here's ways that we can potentially solve those issues.
But even without a public hearing, during the planning commission, when considering a conditional use permit, may take into consideration comments from the public and everything else, where those comments are almost more applicable rather than in a zoning change from residential to commercial at this point.
But they're not required to hear any such comments, and there's no formal process by which anybody else would be able to give comments that absolutely must be considered, as is the case with a public hearing. So the amendment that was made to the conditional use permit process was intended to streamline these kinds of processes, and just so happens the first test case we have now is a slaughterhouse which is not specifically provided for in our code, and presents us with an interesting test case. If you could do that during the public hearing, or if Commissioner Hopes wants to recognize you, that's his decision.
Commissioners, do you have any preference?
Yeah, I'd like to hear him.
Please come to the mic.
I'm Kevin Callahan. I am the current landowner of that land. I will not be the business owner of the business that, you know, for this conditional use permit that has come through. I think the term slaughterhouse is a strong term. I mean, there's one up in Helper that's like Ron's Meats that currently just recently went out of business. It'd be a business similar to that that's, you know, right on Main Street in Helper. There are some, I'm not sure if they did killing operation at the Ron's Meats in Helper. I think they did, but it would be similar to that. And then also in the current zone that's there are also commercial businesses that are close by. There's a boat repair business that is close by, that there's a huge yard of stored boats in the area. I mean, it's not the only commercial business that's operating in that general area. And the steel store is to the south, where they, you know, I'm sure you're familiar with the steel store. So I don't know if you had any other questions that I could address. I'm not, like I say, the business part of it is not me, so I don't know the ins and outs, every part of the business. That's, I guess, not my forte, so I couldn't answer those exactly. So.
Thank you. Any further questions, commissioners?
I don't have any others.
Jake, you had a few more questions? Commissioner Miller, sorry.
As far as a zone change from residential to commercial, there's always the chance that we do approve it, it becomes a commercial area, and then through whatever conversations the Planning and Zoning Commission has, that they may not give a conditional use for the intended operation. In an overall county perspective, we do want more of our land to be developed. We do want more of our areas to be used for business purposes, whether that be commercial or industrial or all the different zoning designations that align with that. You know, I guess one, and this question again is more of a planning and zoning question with future occupancy in mind, but as far as increased traffic on this road, Todd, from a planning perspective, do you feel that a zone change where this might increase some traffic on the road would be good for the community?
I don't think it would negatively impact it. There's going to be people that'll go there, drop off their livestock or their wild game, but I don't think it'll increase it to the point to where there's safety concerns. There's a lot of farm fields around the area, so people pulling trailers and those things, it's already exists. So I don't think there'll be a negative impact as far as traffic increase. I don't think it'll generate enough business. They'll have their customers, but it's not going to be a significant increase.
Okay. And just conversationally, in reviewing the item, it's for consideration of possible approval. The null hypothesis of that is, what reasons do we have to keep it residential versus allowing it to go commercial? And just from the high level overview, not considering occupancy or anything else, at the moment, I'm not seeing any significant reasons why we should keep it from being commercial.
So that's where balancing in between, okay, here's what they want to change it to, and looking at that, I understand it's kind of be a sensitive issue, trying to find somewhere where they can go. They want to be a little bit closer to town, but that does put them closer to some residential areas. So when the proposal came out, we looked at it and said, okay, is it possible to go in there? Because like I said, we don't address it, and there's a lot of things we're going to have to address that just hasn't been in the zones. So we can have a clear-cut rule, and that comes back a lot to our general plan. Our general plan is very vague on some of our commercial and residential and industrial areas. And if we can update the general plan and say, okay, here's where, as a community, where we want these types of businesses to go, and we want the commercial and these type of businesses to be focused in these areas, we can work with our zoning regulations and say, okay, look, when this comes up, this is how we're going to deal with them. We're going to locate them in such an area. Right now, it's like I said, very vague, and as far as guidance from the general plan on where to allow these areas. So I lean more on the side of the property owner who approaches us saying, this is what I want to do. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. Here's a process you have to go through and do the zone change and see if the commissioners agree with it, or if they also like the idea. If not, then you can't do it. But yes, it is possible, because we don't have anything in our documents that says that you can't do it.
And so even if we do approve of this zone change to commercial, the Planning and Zoning Commission needs to review in their process. I mean, the health department has to sign off saying there's not going to be any type of contamination in the river. The roads have to sign off on a lot of different things. Weed and abatement and everybody else, there's a very big process that would address some of the questions that were brought up today. And if they can't be positively addressed, then there will not be a certificate of occupancy issued.
Correct.
So commissioners, if we look at the code, our development code for C1 zones, it says characteristic of this zone are uses such as retail stores, banks, restaurants, office structures, warehouses, housing parks, light construction companies, churches, and a wide variety of specialty shops located in surroundings that are aesthetically pleasing and convenient and safely accessible. In general, these zones should be located adjacent to major traffic arteries. So to the extent that you view this this operation as primarily, say, a meat shop or a meat store, there's some reasoning to believe that this would fit within within an operation. It also says residential developments, manufacturing uses, and other activities that would be inconsistent with the use of the land for commercial activities are not permitted in the zone. So it's kind of and I just read that to you just to give you an idea of what a C1 zone is supposed to look like, and what it's generally for. There's a broad variety of uses allowed there. But that's kind of the description of the C1 zone.
And
That is the description of the C1 zone directly from the development code.
And that's from talking to the individual, Mr. Curtis, who's doing the business of, he was wanting to do more of a retail end. Yes, he's going to be processing domestic and wild, but also wanted to offer that retail component, like some of the others in our area. When I looked at licensed butcher meat processing facilities, there's not very many in Carbon County. And so he said, you know, he looks at a proposed need for that, and he wants to offer that service that he feel is lacking. So that's where we went with the retail specialty shop. You know, thought it fit more in that box with what he's doing. It's not going to be a high capacity butcher facility.
One of the questions that was asked was how many animals would be on there. If you look in the code, it says that incidental pasturing and keeping of livestock at levels not exceeding 1 animal unit for each 10,000 square feet, 3.3 acres, 43,000 square feet per acre. They're only gonna be able to have 14 animals in the yard if they, so it's limiting them to how many animals they can have in a yard. And that was one of the questions that was brought up.
That's a good point.
So the code does say they're not gonna have more than 14 animals in their yard.
Live animals.
Live animals in their yard.
Yeah. Which I think addresses some of the concern of what could contaminate the river and
But
what could be a nuisance.
It could never become a bigger slaughterhouse than that. You'd have to take them to an I-1 or I-2 zone.
And that's where we discussed last night, you know, anything above and beyond the actual processing of meat and dropping off, you know, a few cows or whatever domestic, you know, he'd have to come back in for a reconsideration of a conditional use permit. We don't want to see it become a massive, you know, feedlot and slaughter area. It's something that's on a smaller scale. All of his buildings will be located up out of the floodplain. The area slopes down to the river, so he won't be able to do any development down in the river. Anything else will be up off the road, probably, you know, 40, 50 feet is what, you know, the 40 feet is a setback in the commercial area, so he'd back about 40 feet with his parking, but no development will be able to be down along the river. He'll have to keep everything up.
5 years from now, Todd, so I know in the next couple of years you will be revamping the entire area plan and everything like that. And it's hard to know because nobody has a crystal ball, but, you know, 5 years from now, and also understanding we have industrial zoned parcels nearby, do you foresee any reason why we would regret changing it from residential to commercial today?
I don't think so. I think we discussed with the conditional use permit, we have things in there to where we could limit it, and if it goes beyond that scope, we could revoke the conditional use permit and the business license, and then if he goes beyond the scope of, you know, the smaller establishment that he wants to do. So that's always the risk when we have businesses come in, you know, are they going to go above and beyond what is allowed in the zone? And in some situations we've had that, and we've had to address that. For the most part, everyone agrees to the document and they follow it, realizing this is what I have to do to stay in business. And, you know, 99% of the time everyone follows county and state guidelines.
So in a way you are protecting some of the concerns that have been addressed today by recommending it be a C1 versus an industrial or some other zone, because it is something that you can rein them back in if they exceed their occupancy rules.
Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering if that answers the questions that were put forth by the property owners, and if that changes any of their thoughts. I know it's not public hearing, but
you can certainly continue to discuss it with the members of the public, sure.
So that's my question, is if the feelings, if the questions have been primarily answered, and if there's a change in the opinions as far as the landowners go.
If you'd like to speak to that, please come to the mic so we can get it on record, and please state your name again for the record.
Name is David Platt. Could you please reread the C1, the items that are to be used? I think a meat market, I can live with a meat market, you know,
So
But I
this
don't-
is,
But I don't want any a slaughterhouse, though.
this is the legislative intent section that I read. That, so it's not a comprehensive list or a limiting list.
I understand that.
Okay, I want you to
but-
understand
but-
that. I'll read it again, sure.
But when you're talking about churches and such things as that, you know, that's not exactly what we're talking about here.
Yeah, this is intended to be just descriptive of the
Yes.
zone and not limiting necessarily. Characteristic of this zone are uses such as retail stores, banks, restaurants, office structures, warehouses, housing parks, light construction companies, churches, and a wide variety of specialty shops located in surroundings that are aesthetically pleasing and conveniently and safely accessible. In general, these zones should be located adjacent to major traffic arteries.
Thank you. To me, gentlemen, that doesn't sound to me like the development that we're talking about here. I think that they need to look for another place or have it. We talked about Pryride here. You know, Pryride runs their water lines all the way out to Victor, and there's an awful lot of space between here and Victor. And I think if they could locate it in some non-residential area, I think it'd be much better suited. Thank you.
Mr. Platt, what do you intend to do with your industrial zone?
With my industrial zone?
Yeah.
I don't have any industrial zone.
Your property is located in an industrial zone.
I would probably ask for it to be rezoned to residential.
Okay, how long have you owned the property?
Probably 10 years.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Miller? We have a direction we want to go?
You know, I think it would be good for us to allow the process to further so that the Planning and Zoning Commission can actually do their job and find out if this is a proper use for that area. They can't do that unless we do approve of the zone change. So I would go ahead and make the motion that we do allow that zone change to commercial, which even if it doesn't end up being used for the proposed use, it could then be used for another commercial use.
We have a motion?
I'm opposed just because of the close proximity to the residential areas there. Yes, I know we can have those islands, but I think that where there is that potential for residential around this particular area, I won't be able to second that. So I'd be happy to make a replacement motion that we deny the zoning change.
So we have two motions.
We do.
Mine being the substitute motion.
I love being put in this spot.
Sorry, Commissioner Hobbs.
Another option, commissioners, is, and I'm not suggesting this by any means as a course to follow. If you did deny the zone change tonight, you could still instruct staff to come up with a definition of to propose some changes to the development code that would maybe perhaps contemplate the possible uses that we're talking about tonight. One of the things I'm sensing is we don't really have a sense as to whether this is going to be a slaughterhouse that's going to have some heavy usage, or is this going to be the type of usage that's going to be used occasionally and primarily during hunting season, for example. One option would be that if there was a denial of the vote tonight, or of the zone change, we could look at some other possible uses and maybe redefine the code that way. Our applicant would be delayed in his project if we went that way, probably by several months. So I'm not suggesting that that's an option, but what we could do is look at what we're defining in our C1 zones and our C2 zones, and possibly narrow those things a little more closely, and so that when an applicant comes, he can say, well, here's what I'm doing. It's such and such permitted use, and it's specifically permitted or it's such and such conditional use, and it's a conditional use that's specifically listed in such and such section of the code. So that when you hear these things, you're not wondering, what is this? Where does it fit? What is this thing really going to be doing? So you could give us that direction, but again, that's probably cold comfort for the applicant tonight, who would like to have a approval tonight. So maybe that's not the best time to raise that, but I know that the decision's weighing in the balance, and I wanted to present that as an option.
This is kind of a tricky situation because there are times where industrial or commercial comes in first, and then residents move in around them, and then complain that they're there. And in the return, sometimes the residents are there and a business comes in. So it happens both ways, and that's where I'm caught in the middle. I believe that there will be more residential growth in the area than there will be commercial. I'm going to. Will you amend your motion for further study on or definition of C1 zones to include that?
Yeah, I'm not sure that we need to do that at this point, because that could be a function of the planning.
My
board.
concern is if you delay the vote further, that's an appealable issue for the applicant. The applicant is entitled to a vote. You could delay it, but the applicant could appeal and force you to make that decision. So you could do so, but these types of decisions are not to be delayed generally.
Please come to the mic.
The one thing that I wanted to also bring up is this property that we're talking about was an industrial zone just, I believe, 2 years ago. And I came in and changed it from industrial to residential at that time. And the neighboring areas, like you pointed out earlier, are industrial zones. It's not residential zones that are necessarily right there next to it.
Well, there's actually both, right?
Yeah, there's both.
I mean,
yes.
There's residential, industrial.
But across the street is all industrial. There's more industrial and commercial in that area, general area, than residential.
Do we know what the David Platt property is?
I believe that one's residential, I believe.
This one.
Oh, that's
that.
Wellington City.
Oh.
So I don't know that one. I don't know what that one is zoned. That's city.
Okay. It's the property just north.
Just to the north.
No, the one
directly north.
Just directly north. Well, everything east is zoned industrial. So on the map here, everything east of the property in red is industrial. Your other piece of property that adjoins this is unidentified because it is in Wellington City. Thank you.
So I guess, I mean, that, to me, it seems there's more, if the concern is in residential zone, there's much more industrial zone and commercial zone in the general area than residential zone. If that's, if that's the concern, but I guess I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Well, you got a motion and a substitute motion.
I'm going to step down and second the substitute motion to deny. I feel that because of what is being proposed doesn't fit with future development in the area.
Call for a vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
All opposed? Nay. We have Commissioner Potter and Commissioner Hopes in favor of the motion, and Commissioner Miller opposed to the motion. Item number 12, public hearing on proposed amendments to the Carbon County Development Code, Section 9, definitions. Todd Thorne. Todd, you want to go through any changes? So, quick move through the changes that you've proposed here.
So overall, there is over 80 new definitions to Chapter 9. So I doubled the amount of definitions. Okay. One that I added from last night's Planning and Zoning Commission was a material staging area. That's one that we included in your packet a little bit before the meeting. Other than that, everything else is the same. The material staging area we were looking at for potential construction projects, if they're going to want to stage gravel or other material, that they can have an area where they can stage it, and it wouldn't be considered a gravel pit or some other things that we're going to have to address in our zoning code. So other than that, all the changes that you've seen previously are the same, with that one addition to a material staging area. And I don't know if you want me to go through specifics on, you know, all the definitions, or if you had any questions on any of them.
I didn't have any questions on them, but tonight's discussion and public hearing brings up one other change that you should be looking at.
Yep. Yes.
Let's define that and put a definition to it.
Yep.
Commissioners, there's one other change I'd like to propose to that, and that is that there's a definition in here for short-term rentals. I spoke with Todd, and we both agree that the definition for short-term rental should actually match the definition for short-term rentals contained in our business license ordinance.
What line number are you on?
So this would be on page 9-11, 516, line 516. And I can tell you what that definition is. The definition in our business license ordinance of a short-term rental is the lease of any residential building or dwelling to any person or entity other than the record owner of title for use, occupancy, lodging, or dwelling for a term of less than 29 consecutive calendar days of occupancy, for which remuneration is paid either directly or indirectly. For the purposes of this section, occupancy of the property shall be deemed to include use of the property as a single-family or multi-family dwelling, motel, hotel, bed and breakfast, hostel, resort, or other transient lodging uses. So the amendment that we did to the business license ordinance earlier this year was intended to encapsulate any possible residential type building that's being used as a short-term rental, whether it calls itself a bed and breakfast or a hotel or a hostel. So it's a fairly broad definition that's meant to encompass modern and current uses of short-term rentals. And so we both thought that the definition should be consistent in both Section 9 of the Development Code as in the business license ordinance as well.
Commissioners, any further questions on what's being proposed?
I don't have any more questions. I'd make the motion to approve.
We need a public hearing
first.
Yes. Sorry, I have the old agenda, and all my line items numbers are mixed up, so I apologize there.
No, we're good. If there's no more questions, we'll move on to the public hearing. We'll open this public hearing at 5:48. Anyone that would like to speak to this, please come to the mic, state your name for the record, and state your concerns. Oh, come on, the last one was fun. Seeing that no one is jumping at the chance to come and speak to this, we'll close this at 5:49. Item number 13, consideration and possible approval of proposed amendments to the Carbon County Development Code, Section 9. Commissioners, please remember, we have some substitute language. If you prefer that substitute language that Christian has proposed in your motion.
I'll make my motion now at the right time. I'll move to approve with the substitute motion as indicated.
The substitute language?
Yes.
Okay,
The substitute language as mentioned by Christian.
Christian, would it be appropriate to also have that in regards to slaughterhouses and so forth at this point in time, or let that come back?
I think something like that ought to come back to you.
Okay.
I think if you want a definition as to, say, slaughterhouse, a butcher shop, meat packing, we ought to be precise and make sure you're very comfortable with those, because what we've seen tonight. So yes, I prefer we bring that back to you if we're going to do that.
I'll second Commissioner Meller's motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
So is that, I'm sorry, was that a motion then to make those changes and bring them back to you for?
I think the motion was to make the changes based upon your language from the business license.
The motion was approval of what was provided with the substitute language.
Of short-term rentals.
Okay, and with respect to the other items, you will just bring those back at a later date?
Correct.
As a
Yes.
separate?
Correct.
That is correct.
Got it, thank you.
Yep. Item number 14, review and possible approval of amendment to the contracts between Castleview Hospital and Carbon County Ambulance for non-emergency ambulance transportation and payment for items and services agreement. Christian.
Commissioners, if I could just mention this, the amendment to the contract is actually identical to another contract that we already have in place with Castleview Hospital that says the same thing and accomplishes the same thing. And so I've emailed Mark Holyoke at the hospital and asked him to explain if we really need to do this. I'm not opposed, of course, to doing an amendment, but we ought not to have an amendment and a contract that say the same thing. So if we're going to approve this as an amendment, we probably ought to revoke and terminate the other contract, so there's just one of them hanging out here. Because as I've reviewed this, we have a contract in place already that does the exact same thing. So Mark's response to me was that he would like to talk to his legal department and get back to me. So I would ask that we table this until next meeting, and possibly, if they do want to still approve this, we probably make some changes to how it's titled on the agenda. But I'd request that you table it for tonight.
Christian, just for the information of the public, this is a combination of two contracts, one for cell service that they provide so we can transmit data to the hospital lifetime, and also for the services that we render for transporting individuals, correct? So this is just a combination?
Well, not exactly correct.
No?
That's
Okay.
that's why I had a problem with it, is because, yes, that is what the amendment does, is it's for the transmission of data and who's paying for the data and who's paying for the data equipment to go into the ambulance. But we already have a contract for that says the hospital is going to pay for that.
Okay.
And they have asked, and I think what they're saying is, well, we want that to, I think what their intent is, and I'm going out on a ledge here, is that they want that contract to actually be an addendum to their other contract.
Okay.
But their other contract says this is a contract for non-emergency transportation. And my other concern is when I read the contract for cardiac data transmission services, it's not limited to just non-emergency transportation type events. So it seems to me like it doesn't fit as an addendum or as an amendment to that original contract.
Okay. Because my understanding of it when I talked with Don at the ambulance was they had two contracts. They wanted to simplify it and move it down to one contract for both services, but maybe the language
this wouldn't
isn't
do
sure.
that.
Okay.
This wouldn't do that because you'd still have, they're still calling this an amendment, and they're still having the other contract. So if they want to combine it all into one global contract, that would be real easy to do. We could certainly accommodate that. I just
Okay.
not seeing how they how it's gonna work the way they're proposing it.
I appreciate your recommendation. We have a recommendation to table.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item number 15, consideration of possible approval of membership renewal with Rural Utah Alliance.
Commissioner Holmes, we don't exactly have, I don't believe, a contract for renewal, but I do have a letter from them that I shared with you previously I'd like to read. It just talks about their current litigation in an effort to protect, well, it's the California coal case litigation. It talks about at our last meeting, so I currently sit as a board member of RUA, Rural Utah Alliance, and it says, at our last meeting, Commissioner Miller asked about the California coal tax litigation and precisely what is now occurring concerning the litigation appropriations. I think this case, and this is Peter Sturba who is speaking in this letter, I think this case is hugely significant for all of our rural communities, especially for our coal-producing rural counties. Right now, California has two particular statutes which restrict and limit the importation of electrical power into the state of California produced as a result of coal-burning power plants. Not only does this affect the marketability of Utah's coal, but could have a disastrous effect on future development and economic viability. We've already experienced that in our county. In 2016, the United States 8th Circuit Court of Appeals struck down a similar statute which Minnesota had enacted, which also attempted to limit the importation of electrical energy delivered from carbon-based production and also sought to regulate indirectly the price charged for electricity. All of the impacts that resulted from the Minnesota statute impacted other states. One of the states most affected was North Dakota, which took a lawsuit joined by a number of electrical cooperatives against the state of Minnesota because its claim was that Minnesota's statute was unconstitutional. The Commerce Clause of the Constitution restricts the states from unnecessarily burdening commerce between the states, but also limits the extraterritorial impacts of state legislature as they may negatively impact the economies of another state. The 8th Circuit struck down the Minnesota statute and is the model for the Utah proceeding against the state of California. Last year, this is Peter again, Peter Sturba, I had multiple discussions with Attorney General Reyes and his office, as well as a number of you who met with me and the Governor Herbert to discuss the wisdom of Utah filing a lawsuit against California. And I was there in that governor meeting. As a direct result of those discussions, the recent legislative session appropriated approximately $1.6 million to finance the cost of filing a lawsuit against California and addressing all expected litigation costs as a result. As I think I made clear in our board meeting, I am not exactly sure what will develop and how this money will be used. However, it was the thinking at the end of the session that RUA and perhaps one other NGO would be in charge of managing and supervising the litigation. This could involve contracting with other law firms and or contracting with other resources which may be necessary. Right now, until I had a chance to meet with the director of the Department of Natural Resources, where the appropriation had actually been directed, I do not know precisely what will transpire from here. The good and the wonderful news is that the state of Utah is going to take this case. The case will be to protect the viability of our coal production and also to further the economies of rural Utah and all markets that are coal dependent. Frankly, I think we have an excellent chance at prevailing. It is absolutely the right thing to do for the benefit of rural Utah. And so, just as you know, when RUA was first organized, they were originally funded by the state of Utah with $250,000 to help address issues that affect rural Utah. We became members, one of the first members. We put in $5,000. They have not billed us since, though it's been more than a year. What they are doing is exciting. It allows us to join our voice with the rest of Utah in protecting the viability of coal production and its sell value in other states, and not just here locally and domestically, but internationally. So some exciting news, nothing more to share other than that. I don't know if you have any discussion or questions in regards to that letter that I shared previously.
From the invoices we have in the past, we have paid them in the amount of $5,000, $2,500, and another check for $2,500. What I would like to see an invoice of what the annual membership is before we pay. I believe in RUA. They're doing a good job. They're advocating for rural Utah. Before, my personal opinion, before I move forward on this, I would like to see an invoice.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, I don't have any action item, although it's consideration of possible approval of membership. I mean, we don't have a contract, we don't have a request or an invoice.
Okay.
The other question then would be, because I'm not sure this was a budgeted item, where we would be able to take that from. Seth, you'd maybe have to give us some direction when it comes back.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Item number 16, review and possible approval of a contract with Reagan Outdoor Advertising for Warrior Days billboard. Jake, Commissioner Miller.
We have Kara Hillam and Rachel who have been negotiating opportunities for us. I don't know if you'd want to come and speak about the Reagan billboard. No? Just what we have? Commissioners, have you had a chance to review that?
I have. It goes. This was unbudgeted. Before I feel comfortable moving forward, we needed. This is for the advertising up north, correct?
The billboards.
The billboards.
This would be for the out-of-town advertising to help invite people to events that we have here locally, specifically the events we have during the month of July. And I think the request is made to the travel and tourism dollars that we have been compiling over the last several years.
Okay.
The other question in regards to the invoice is, I thought this was going to be for multiple periods. This invoice or this display contract seems to only reflect just the one period. Is there another page, another contract to come with this?
It does say cost per period, which is monthly, and I believe the first period would potentially begin on the 7th of this month if we were to approve it today. There's the cost per period there, and then don't forget, just down a little bit, it says $504 for a print fee. That's the vinyl that goes up on it. And so that's what it would be. And of course, we would be able to take it down after 1 month if we didn't feel we were getting any benefit. We could keep it going for 3 months. I would propose that we do keep it going at least until the month of July.
This contract is written for the 2 months, and that's really where I was asking the question is,
okay,
you know, is there a separate invoice, a separate contract, or where this would be approved for the 2 periods, that's all that's before us?
You're correct, that just for the 2 periods.
Okay.
Commissioners, there's also a section in here that says all artwork and advertising submitted to advertisers, oh, that's by them, shall remain the property of Reagan. I'm sorry, I'd misread that. I thought that meant if we give them any artwork, they can keep that and use it. It doesn't say that. I was mistaken. Perfect. Apologize.
We're good.
No,
sometimes you have to read things out loud, right, to understand them. So.
No, and we definitely appreciate your eyes on that.
Commissioner Hopes, I also have looked at the dollars available through tourism, and this is a contract that we could definitely approve and take through them.
Okay, thank you. That answers that question. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the contract with Reagan Outdoor Advertising for the billboard for a period of 2 months.
And I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item number 17, review and possible approval of a contract with Now You See It LLC for sound, lighting, and stage for Warrior Days. Commissioners, if you remember last commission meeting, they presented the Darryl Worley concert, but these other contracts for the setting up of the stage and the lighting was not included and is a separate contract, but it wasn't on the agenda, so we had to bring those back. That's where this comes from. Commissioner Miller?
Yes. Now, Christian, there wasn't a lot terribly different from their first contract, other than the first contract was for entertainers, this being for the lighting and sound. When I read through it, I didn't have any concerns, but I'm not an attorney. Did you see anything that we should be worried about?
No, I'm not concerned about it, other than my recollection was $7,500 was going to cover everything when they were here speaking, but clearly The 7,500 was just for the entertainer, and these two contracts together are another 7,500 for the, looks like for the production and sound, lighting, and stage. So,
Correct, and
but legally, I have no concerns with the
for sure.
terms of the contract.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, as can be read in the minutes, we did speak to the fact that there would be a total cost of $15,000. We only had the contract for the entertainer at that time available with the ability to review it and everything else. So these contracts, everything all together amongst the three will be $15,000. Approving them in 3 different contracts because they're bringing things together from different vendors or whatever, and they're providing it all to us. They'll be setting up the stage, they'll be providing the sound and the lighting, and everything else mentioned herein.
Okay, we have a contract, commissioners.
Commissioner Miller, on item number 2, are we doing them one at a time? Sorry.
That's the way it reads on the
Okay.
agenda. So
Yeah.
let's, unless you want to talk about all of them and come back and approve them one at a time.
Item number 2 on the production agreement. Is that what you're looking at?
No, that's, if we're doing it with the first one with the setup, I'm fine with that one.
Okay. So I'll
Okay.
make the motion to approve.
Have a motion?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, item number 18, review and possible approval of contract with Now You See It LLC, or LC, for supporting music acts at Warrior Days. Commissioner, you had a question on this one?
I did. On number 2, and I didn't have the other contract in front of me, but this one again specifically talks about the electrical power and 4 single-phase 50-amp twist box. Do we have the ability to accommodate those within these 2 contracts?
The promoter, we gave them a tour of our facility, and from what they identified there at the facility, they said that we had everything that they needed. And so, best of my understanding, because I'm not an electrician myself, but we showed them where the power options were, and they said it was sufficient.
Okay. Any further questions?
I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Review, item number 19, review and possible approval of a contract with Diamond H Rodeo for Warrior Days Rodeo.
Commission, this one, I know this is the stock agreement, right?
Correct.
That's providing the bowls. My concern on this one is that, you know, we've used groups like Clegg Rodeo in the past, and they have always provided some insurance and agreed to indemnify us. To me, this is one of the more dangerous, maybe I'm uninformed, but this is one of those that there seems some possibility of harm resulting, and so we'd be relying solely on the county's own insurance. I just wonder if there's a possibility of having them purchase a policy like our other providers of rodeo stock have done in the past. Because they've always, all our other contracts, when we've used rodeo stock in the past, they have agreed to indemnify us, and they've provided some insurance. So I don't know if that's a concern of yours. You know, it's been nice to have that in the past. But maybe, I'm not sure about the details on how many bowls they're providing here and who's going to be doing the bull riding and what the arena setup's going to be like. So I don't know if that's something maybe you want to talk about for just a moment. But I do believe we do have coverage out there. We do have coverage at our policy does cover this type of thing. However, it's always, you know, our insurance providers have always asked that they not be the first and primary coverage on dangerous events.
Now, I know I've reviewed this because it was digitally turned over, but it's not in my packet.
I've got a copy. You can, if you want to look at that.
Oh, Commissioner Hopes.
I have a copy.
And does it say on there that they don't have their own
It
insurance?
says Carbon County will be responsible for providing liability insurance. It's circled there. That's not how I read it. If you look at that line there, it says Carbon County, and then the phrase adjacent to it will be responsible for. So if they are willing to do that, I think that's great, but this format is awful. We need to retype. I'm happy to retype it and put that in there, but if we're in a lawsuit and I'm their attorney, I'm going to say Carbon County says right here you guys are providing liability insurance. So if that's what they're going to, if they do have insurance that they will provide. Okay. I see. Okay, I get it. I get it. But we got to retype this.
Yes, please.
Okay.
So Christian, if we rewrote this to include what you're mentioning,
yeah, then I'm happy. Then I'm a happy man. I'm happy to do it. But I just think the way it's written is just a problem.
I agree. That was one of the questions that I had as I reviewed this. There's several handwritten parts. I think we need to clear it up.
Yeah.
So everybody knows exactly what it says.
But Rachel's explanation makes sense. I see now what they're doing, and so I can, based on what she explained, we can put that together now. Okay. So I get it now that I've heard that.
Okay. Based on how you understand its intent, if you rewrite it that way, is that something that we can approve in this meeting?
I think so. If you're comfortable with that.
The other question that needs to be asked is originally you talked about a $3,000 contract, also written in here is an additional $1,000 for contest money. So if we're retyping it, it needs to be stricken out on that item.
So that just reads $3,000 from the Carbon County.
Okay.
And would have been $4,000, but Rachel Crumple found a $1,000 sponsor. Thank you, Rachel.
Any further questions on this contract, commissioners?
If there's none others, I'll go ahead and make the motion that Christian rewrites it to where it reads as we feel it was intended, so that we can then, approve it and have them sign it.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Who is the $1,000 sponsor? Scamp Excavating.
Okay. Item number 20, review and possible approval of a contract with Monroe Magnuson for announcing and master of ceremonies at Warrior Days bull riding event.
I reviewed this contract too, commissioners. I didn't have any concerns with the terms of this contract.
Commissioners, any questions?
I don't have any.
Motion to approve?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes. Item number 21, review and possible approval of a contract with Midway West for Warrior Days Carnival. Commissioners, I had a couple questions. It states in here that they will provide a certificate of insurance to the sponsor in the amount of $3 million. I believe that would be good if we just make that part of this motion, that they provide us with that. Also, where we are putting them, it says the sponsor shall obtain and pay for cost of portable restroom facilities, trash removal, RV hookups, and security if needed. And sponsor shall furnish drinkable water for food and concessions. Do you know where this will be located, and are these requests doable? Do we have the clean water and the...
So as a generalized contract that they have, sometimes they do these events in parking lots and other places. Where we're having them situated, there are restrooms nearby, and it's sufficient for all of that. And the event center building itself will be open, where they have drinking fountains and all of that nature. Though I think that we'll also be providing them with some bottles of water and some other things too.
But this would be for their concession stands. As they cook and clean up, they would need access to potable water that they can...
For washing and...
Correct.
Yeah.
So
Now-
I just want to make sure that we're able to provide the things.
They'll be situated really close to the arena, and the arena has a lot of those what little shops built into it, so to speak, that have the, what are they, not accordion doors, what roll-up doors or whatever.
Doors.
And there is running water in all of those facilities
Okay.
that could be used, and anyway, that'll all be provided.
Commissioners,
I-
go ahead, Commissioner.
I was
Sorry.
just going to say, in that section, then we should have stricken the portable restrooms and the RV hookups. We do not have RV hookups at the fairgrounds.
And my other concern is that it indicates that Energy Days and Warrior Event Celebration is the sponsor. I think it needs to be. I think it needs to be Carbon County.
I agree.
Because
that's
we
one
want to
of my
be
other
the entity that's indemnified and protected by the insurance.
Yes.
Correct. So that does need to be changed. The other thing that I had as part of my question is, it says Midway West operations at any time during the period beginning 60 days prior to the first day of the period specified in the item one above and ending 30 days after the last day event. It says that shall not book or sponsor directly or indirectly any show or exhibition, amusement, midway concessions, or attraction of similar nature to Midway West's operation during 60 days before or 30 days after. Does that conflict with anything that we have going on before or after? As I read through that, I just want to make sure that we're not conflicting with any events prior to 60 days prior to this and 30 days after. Are we going to have any other events that would have
A Carnival Midway, basically.
a conflict?
That is, assuming Carbon County is the sponsor, the answer is no. So we should be good there.
But part of that same question is Midway concessions. Are there other concessions that are vendors that are being invited in and sold space during this same period of time? So, that becomes one of those other items that's in that same time frame.
Yes, we definitely are having other vendors there at that very same event, vendors for food and other things of that nature.
So are you going to strike that from this contract? Because the way it reads is that you shall not book or sponsor Midway concessions.
So I think my guess is what they don't want is the concessions being right in the middle of the carnival, right? But that needs to be clarified in here, if
Well,
that's.
what if it's adjacent to? I mean, if
Well,
they're
we
set
need
up
to
out in the
clarify
parking
that.
lot and we have vendors that are in the park, are they going to see that as a conflict to their event?
Right.
Rachel has some input on that.
Come on,
Please
if you
come
don't
up
mind
to the
coming
mic so
to the
we can get ya.
microphone.
So we want to record your voice. No, you need to come up to the mic, please.
We
Please come
can't
up to the
record
mic.
you if you're not on the microphone, because we take a transcript of what you say. Sorry.
Okay, so in dealing with Michelle from Midway West, what we requested from all of these eventers is just to get their contracts put together. So
You need to talk into the microphone so we...
So we knew she was coming here free of charge on those dates, so we can guarantee a carnival that we are promoting and putting in flyers and on billboards. She is willing, she is more than willing. She knows what she's coming into. She knows the other events that are taking place. They are not food vendors at the carnival. They're not food vendors. They are aware they have their own generators. They are aware that they are going to receive free dry camping, you know, stalls and a spot for them. But she is willing to scratch whatever items from the contract necessary. I just requested, she said, whatever we'd like to scratch is fine, or whatever we'd like to change or alter. I just requested a contract to present at commission meeting to guarantee the carnival free of charge.
And back to Commissioner Hopes' point, you know, I had the same concern as whether or not say the county decides to do a midway carnival for the county fair or during that time, or if there's another event that's going to do a midway carnival. I just wondered if there was any conflict in the period there.
Okay. So
but I hear whether or not that's sponsored by the county or not, I think what matters is that if we're allowing it, as you mentioned, well, if it's not the county that's doing it, it's not a conflict. I think though, if the county is allowing it at the fairgrounds and somebody else is going to bring in a carnival, I think that puts us at risk. So we need to, I don't know if that's a concern or not.
Rachel, you kind of insinuated that she probably would be perfectly fine if we scratch that off.
Yep.
So
okay.
She's fine.
Let's.
She asked if there were any alterations needed, you know, because I just kind of last minute gave them a deadline to get me contracts, but
Sure.
she's completely fine as well.
Okay.
So just to avoid any encumbrances, let's go ahead and whatever we end up approving there, approve that we have it with that omitted.
Okay.
It'd be my recommendation that we
Thank you, guys.
that we strike cost of portable restroom facilities, RV hookups, number 8, and then change the wording to Carbon County rather than Energy Days and Warrior events. Do you have any other changes?
The other one that I was going to bring up is the security if needed. What does that mean?
So a lot of these vendors, when I say vendors, people, entertainers, groups that come in and do events, they require that we do have security guards or sheriff's deputies or police departments or somebody patrolling at a capacity that would be appropriate. Sheriff Wood and I have started some conversations what would be necessary, and I don't know if you want to talk about that or.
I just want to know what you expect. By saying what's appropriate doesn't help me at all. Do you want people that are there for the entire event, or do you want random patrols through there? And understanding that yes, we will seek assistance from police departments and things, but this is our jurisdiction and ultimately our responsibility. So the sheriff's office will be the lead on this. And we'll be happy to handle it, but nobody has yet to answer my questions about what is expected from these companies. And I want to know what they want. What does their insurance company want? With the way of the world today, as we discussed before, some of these events don't happen without police officers, not just security. Armed police officers in uniform acting under the color of their authority to protect the crowds. So if that's what we're looking for, we need to know that up front. We need to know how many you need, and we'll be happy to accommodate.
So we'll try to get you an answer to that in the next 2 days or so that we know and understand exactly. But right now we're kind of expecting something similar to International Days as far as a force of security.
I think we can accommodate that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions or
that was all I had, Commissioner.
Amended recommendations?
Go ahead and make the motion to approve with those requested omissions and adjustments.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Chair, before we move on to the next item, I would like to request some additional information in regards to the Warrior Days that's coming up. We talked about last time that we needed a detailed budget. The items that have been submitted, I thank you for, but we also need to have an indication of labor, number of people involved with it, any additional materials that would need to be purchased, cost of the ambulance, the sheriff we've already addressed, and security. We also talked about a detailed marketing plan so that if we are going to administer or submit additional dollars, that we can have an idea of what those are, not just a piecemeal contract coming forward. And the last thing that I would ask is that these items be added on the Friday prior to our commission with the detailed information that comes with it. We expect that of all people asking to be on the commission agenda. We know that, yes, changes happen, and we're more than happy to accommodate that, but it would be nice to have those agenda items on by Friday and the detailed information to go with them.
Okay.
What do you have as the next item?
Item number 22, update on Governor's Rural Partnership Board's April meeting.
Okay. So I asked Rita to put this on there, and Commissioner Potter, you can chime in. The Governor's Rural Partnership Board meeting that we both attended was enlightening. There were a few updates, and a lot of them were legislative updates that pertain to rural counties. And without speaking too much about them, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Rural Initiatives Bill and some of the not necessarily a co-bill to that, but a bill that can definitely add to it. The Rural Initiatives Bill allows for people to become freelancers. It not only allows for people to become freelancers in rural Utah, it allows you to connect with various platforms so that you're not all alone trying to figure out how to become a freelancer. And why is it so important for people in rural Utah to become freelancers? Well, sometimes there's not there are geographic boundaries that limit or prohibit you from being able to market yourself, your services, or your products. And so they had money proportioned from the state to allow for this, and they're looking to establish coordinators in each community to help these freelancers get up and off the ground, almost an incubator of sorts, but a workforce services assistance. Each community might have a different person or different agency to represent that coordinating effort. In our community, it could be the Association of Local Governments, it could be BEAR, it could be a number of different groups or organizations, but somebody will eventually be established as the coordinator to help bring this freelancer initiative, this Rural Utah Jobs Initiative to pass, and so that's kind of exciting. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Not to that item, no.
Okay. There was also some funding mechanisms similar to the old Bridge program through Department of Workforce Services, except this is now post-performance. So after people have hired in some of these rural counties, counties class 4, 5, and 6, they can, after 12 months of employment, request for this grant to be given to them if they've filled out the paperwork and applied for it, obviously, beforehand, and they can receive $5,000 or $6,000 per employee that they hire. So make sure that that's on your radar. Again, to me, it's very similar to what used to be the Bridge program through DWS, but now it's post-performance, so you have to have employed them for 12 months and then be a recipient of those dollars. And then, Commissioner Potter, I'm sure you'll want to speak to this one. The BEAR grants. So BEAR as an organization will be different in the future in the sense that communities and multiple entities within a community may apply for BEAR funding. BEAR stands for Business and Economic Expansion and Retention. So for those efforts or those entities that want to pursue those efforts, you can apply to accomplish those efforts in multiple communities or in one community, and multiple entities within one community can also apply. It may be competitive, and or a community may receive multiple funds up to a 30,000 limit, and depending on the efforts you're trying to it's written that you are limited within a community up to 30,000, but through various discussions, there are ways around getting even more money through the new BEAR grant funding options.
The money that was set aside from the legislature will help with that process, but The program as we know it, I see it changing dramatically. These will be competitive grants, no ifs about it, and they will be up to $30,000 per application. They do have to be either from a governmental entity or from a nonprofit, and yes, they can be combined with, say, a city and a county could combine, 2 cities could combine. It could be a nonprofit that went after and by themselves or a combination, but it will be post-performance. So if you're awarded the grant and you don't meet those objectives, you won't receive the money in the future. So it is a different approach to what will happen. That application process for the new BEAR program started on the 1st of May, and it will also, there'll be a webinar that they said would be rolled out in the first, I think it was 7 to 10 days. So that will be online, coming again from the GoEd office. So the deadline for applications is the end of May. So this is a very short window that will have to be submitted for those things. So anyway, we look forward to working, and not only as a county, but working with the cities and others to accumulate as many of those grants as we could within the area. The other thing that has definitely been set aside by the legislature was, I believe it was $1.5 million for the fast track grants. And so part of that process is now, that will pretty much remain the same according to what we received as far as qualifications and the applications, but there is now money that have been dedicated to that, and we would like to see that move forward in the county with qualified applicants. So many times we receive applications or from individuals that are encouraged to apply that don't qualify under the current standards. And so we need to make sure that anyone that's being invited into that program truly qualify going forward. I believe in the last go-round we had 12 applications, 12 or 14 applicants, of which 12 of them were disqualified, only 2 qualified under there. Those aren't our rules, those are the state's rules in qualifying for those funds. And they can be up to $50,000 for these fast-track grants. So again, one of those tools that can be used to help expand our businesses and attract new businesses into the area. The counties that qualified based on their initial stuff that was put out at the conference was counties of 20,000 population or less, so we definitely qualify for that.
And that also bumps out a few of the other counties, so that means more would be available for those that are still in.
Thank you. Item number 23, update on Carbon County's application for Brownfields grant. Commissioners, we received a letter from David R. Lloyd, Director of the Office of Brownfields and Land Revitalization. I'm not sure who put this on the agenda. I believe it was you, Commissioner Miller? No? Commissioner Potter?
I did not put it on the agenda, but I can speak to it in the process if you'd like me to.
If nobody spoke to it, please.
I think I did request just that we announce it as an update.
It is a formal acceptance of our application by the EPA for the Brownfields grant assessment, and through our contractor we will now move into that phase of using those funds. There'll be a contract coming forward that'll have to be approved, and they were also preparing a notice to release for the press in our local area in regards to that. This started last year, and it has got to this point where it has been awarded, and so we'll have to follow through then with the contractor and the EPA, but it was a formal letter letting us know that it has been accepted.
And the funding would be in the amount of around $600,000, if I remember right.
I believe that's correct.
It's $600,000. The EPA have announced that as well. We've already received numerous inquiries from different engineering firms and stuff that would like to help us spend that $600,000. However, phase 1 and 2, we've already went out. Our solicitation process has already gone through last year. We selected Stantec to be able to help us do that. They helped us put together the application, so we're not sending out another proposal. We will be working on our development plan for this is due by the end of this month, and we'll be working through that to finalize things for it. But
as part of that, there will be a committee formed. I believe I almost called you Commissioner, Mayor Peterman. Yeah, you don't want to be up here. Mayor Peterman had expressed some desire to help with that, as well as several others. So as we start forming those committees, we'll start including various people from the community to help us move forward with this project.
And just as a few acknowledgements, I believe we were the only award in all of Utah.
Correct.
There were awards in various other states. And, you know, as someone who was very involved in the entire process, we do have Tammy Ursenbach here with us today. So we appreciate your efforts there, and we look forward to working to improve our areas so that we have even more marketable areas that through this Brownsfield testing can be validated as future development. So it's very exciting for our community.
And finally, the moment you've all been waiting for is the last agenda item, update on Utah Association of Counties Management Convention.
So Commissioner Hobbs, you and I were there. I just wanted to make a few announcements, things that are very applicable to us. Locally, there's been a lot of confusion in regards to community development areas, redevelopment areas, and a lot of that confusion is just amongst the various parties that participate, the taxing entities. We have school board, we have Prywide, or we have Water Conservancy District, all of that. In the Salt Lake County, they have a database that they have put together for all 128 or however many of their redevelopment areas. It shows which ones are active, which ones not. It has all the details of who can apply or what would be applicable within their areas. They establish a baseline of what the taxing entities are promising for development in those areas. And that way it helps their county from a marketing perspective be able to tell with at least some degree of certainty the companies that might be interested, what would be available, and any other incentives that are also stacked on those development areas as well. So that's, I don't know if you wanted to speak more to that particular item. I just have two more items.
No.
The Utah Association of Counties, and Rose, you may already have received notice of this. They have put together an employee benefits pool committee to discuss what it would look like if all of the counties in Utah took their insurance benefits and pulled them together. And the carrier they're looking at is PEHP, but they're also considering several other carriers as well. Right now they're in an effort to gather together the census that each county has so that amongst a much larger pool what that would look like. So that's intriguing. Purpose of doing that is to, how would you say, help communities, especially those smaller communities, save on medical expenses, save on insurance premiums, and be able to have a more robust plan offering without, which otherwise would not be eligible to them unless they had over 1,000 employees. And so if we did a statewide pool, even if not all the counties participated, amongst the entire state, there's over 9,000 employees. And so you're able to have a much larger pool and a much more robust offering. What that would mean to us, well, I don't know that here in Carbon County we're poorly off. I think we're very well off. What it would mean to us is if we at some point had several county employees with very expensive medical situations, that it would help keep our premiums low. Currently we're, I think, in a good position right now, but from a state perspective, it's something that they're working on and they're asking for our involvement. And then lastly, the opportunity zones were discussed a little bit in the UAC Management Convention. The awards were given just a couple Fridays ago, and very excitingly, there's something really good for our community, all the efforts that we went through when I was in DC and then with the Association of Local Governments and then voting on different areas throughout the 4 counties. The Ridge Road area, that contiguous track, which is an exception to the general rule because it's located outside of the eligible area, was accepted and awarded as an opportunity zone. So that's very good news for all future businesses that may or may not be located out there on Ridge Road or somehow affiliated with it. They will be able to, we now as a county can start marketing our opportunity zone. so that future investors will avoid capital gains. Their current capital gains scenario, they can get a 10-year deferral on it, a step up in basis, which will bring down their tax obligation to about 44 cents on the dollar. And then all future gains based on their investment, whether it's a debt or equity play, would be completely tax-free. So a lot of incentives for future growth in Carbon County and for economic development, and that's all very exciting, and that came from our management conference down in St. George.
Thank you. It was a good conference, lots of information, lots of collaboration. It was the first time in Utah's history that both the League of Cities and Towns and the Utah Association of Counties met together as one body and had some joint discussion about different economic development topics and different things. So thank you for the update.
Motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you.